will start by introducing today's guest. And I told the gang that you're coming, but I didn't. I told them, listen, I have a great story how to start Tuesday's conversation, but I will not tell it now. I will wait until Tuesday. So I have a very, very intelligent and smart friend by the name of Dr. Roi Yozevic, and he calls me 2 weeks ago, was it? Roughly 2 weeks ago. And he says to me, my good friend, how is the corona? What's up with you in the corona? What are you doing? And I told him, listen, things as usual, but except for the usual I started this project where I either teach or I bring intelligent people to have intelligent conversations with them. Lo and behold, you know what they say, great minds think alike. Unfortunately, there is a second half with this idiom, fools seldom differ. So I hope that we're both on the same, on the former rather than the latter, because Roi has been doing, Dr. Yozevich has been doing exactly the same thing. And he calls me, he said, listen, I want to talk with you about Hebrew, about the history of the Hebrew, about non-Jewish people around the world learning Hebrew. And I said to him, I sent him, and we found out that we've been doing similar projects over the last few months. So that's crazy, but that's a true story. And I said to him, for sure, I'll come and speak in your special program, and we'll have you speak here. So you see, I told the guys that I'll owe so many favors at the end of this thing, and here is the first one, not the first of many, the last of many, I should say. So Dr. Roi Yozevic is an expert on mechanical engineering. He's got his PhD in mechanical engineering.
Electrical engineering.
Electrical, sorry. Oh, yeah, he is an expert on artificial intelligence. He deals with the autonomous car, and generally, he is an expert on learning. Most of my friends are mentals. He's also a mentalist. So that's, I'm not saying that you're not part of the first definition as well, as long as you call yourself my friend. So he's also a mentalist, but he is super intelligent, and he writes about intelligence. His latest book, the fourth book, is Intelligence, the Unpleasant Truth about Intelligence. So we'll talk about learning, we'll talk about intelligence, we'll talk about artificial intelligence, and I'm sure we'll have fun. I admire his sense of humor and his intelligence, and I'm so happy to have you here, Roi.
Oh, so thank you so much. Let me correct you about a few things. One, electrical engineering is completely different than mechanical engineering. And one of the guys in the chat even said, we are smarter. So you are absolutely right. And the other is that it's a pleasure and honor to be here. I spoke with Netanel a lot about this group, and I'm very happy to be here today. I will say that according to my accent, you probably tell I'm not a Native American. So I will do this interview and conversation in bad English and not great Hebrew. So please.
We could tell you're not a Native American because you didn't have the mohawk and the tornado and the wigwam and all that stuff.
Yeah, I got the native thing. Yes. Okay, so please ask me your question, and I will do my best to give the most correct and accurate and clarifying answers.
Okay, so I think I'll start with, what is artificial intelligence? Maybe even what is intelligence, and then what is artificial intelligence?
Wow, so intelligence, this is a big one. So what is intelligence? And just a second, could you please mute someone? Because I think that there is a noise.
I think it's unfortunately
okay,
the
so
unmutable kids that I have at home.
So you can mute yourself, and then I will try to answer.
When you're speaking, I'll mute myself. Oh, I muted you. Sorry.
Okay. What is intelligence and what is artificial intelligence? So I will start with say what is artificial intelligence, because I think it's much easier, even though you need to define intelligence. So artificial intelligence means to duplicate human intelligence in machines. We want machines that can think. And this is a very hard nut to crack. This is a very hard problem to crack because we need to know how we as human beings think. And this leads me to the second question, or the first: what is intelligence? So I will say that intelligence is like a general capacity or general ability of the individual to reason, to think, to predict, to forecast, to navigate the world through reason. So you need several kinds of attributes to navigate the world. You need to be able to reason. You need to be able to remember. You need to be able to conclude. And intelligence, in a way, encapsulates all those attributes. Now, it's very important to say at the beginning of this conversation that intelligence doesn't encapsulate or capture everything in the human experience. Yes, how nice you are, how well you work with other people, how autistic you are, how much music talent, how much musical you are. Those are very important things that intelligence doesn't measure. Intelligence only measures your brain power, yes, your ability to navigate the world with reason.
While it doesn't encapsulate everything, does it have a strong correlation with some of those characteristics which you've mentioned before, like musicality? Like, yeah, I understand that I might be tone deaf and still intelligent, but would extremely gifted musicians show correlations to intelligent people in general?
We know that the main answer is no, okay? And I want to try to explain. What what does have, or what has been, what has correlation, what has correlation with intelligence and what does not, okay? So morality, being good, has no correlation with intelligence. And this is a very important thing to know, okay? The fact that you are smart doesn't say anything about how good or moral you are.
That's a beautiful point to make, because I think different books of the Bible, if we are already mentioning it, make different points about it. So, for instance, the book of Proverbs, which is a very much adolescent kind of a school smart or a school wise, would present this smart, wise, as well as successful, as well as good, would create this equation between morality and success and intelligence, which in other books we see is not working like that. The book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Job, they present a very different picture. And it's interesting to see what you're saying in that regard.
I will even say that that if you are a bad person, if your moral standards are very low and you have high intelligence, you are much more dangerous to the society than if you are stupid. So intelligence, you harness your intelligence powers to do bad. And this is what we call in the prayer, V'ten lanu sechel tov, good mind. So you need your sechel, your mind, your intelligence can be harnessed to do good things or bad things. And this is crucial. This is extremely important. So the main...
This is, by the way, follows exactly Ecclesiastes 4:17, which says that the stupid, the stupid people, they don't know how to do evil. That's explicitly the point that you made. So, the Kesilim, they do not know how to do evil. Literally.
Bernie Madoff was and still is an extremely intelligent person. Nevertheless, he harnessed, he used he utilized his brain to do bad things. And this goes back to the guide for the preplex in Maimonides, that he said, listen, we have the notion of right and of right and of true and false, and we have the notion of right and wrong. So the idea is how we combine those notions together. And Maimonides says that whenever since we got, they kicked us out of heaven, we are down from the true or false categories to the good and wrong categories. So this is one thing. Intelligence has nothing to do with being good, with being kind, with morality. And this goes another way that you can say you cannot extract moral from reason. You cannot reduce. You cannot reduce the moral principle to the logic, okay? You need another set of assumption, and I will say transcendent assumptions to be moral. So you cannot extract morality from reason. So this is one. Having said that, intelligence has strong correlations with almost everything, with longevity, with your ability or your risk or your probability to get injured during a car accident, during a work accident, with even your probabilities that you will get divorced. Intelligent people divorce less. Why? Because getting divorced is not a smart decision, okay? It's not about that they are better, but getting divorced is not a smart decision. We know that ever since that we know that
I guess the smartest one, they don't get married, so they don't get divorced.
we have, indeed, we have a strong correlation between intelligence and few children. So intelligent people will tend to have fewer number of children than unintelligent people. This is also true. And we need, as religious, as part of a religious orthodox society, to handle this too as well.
Right. Though I would say that there are certain, while you're pointing to towards correlation, there are other things that can sway that correlation, like culture. So creed and culture certainly have effect over the decisions that at the end of the day are made by individuals. And intelligence might not be the only factor that we should consider in that regard. So, for instance, I won't take myself. I have just 6 kids, but my father has 10 kids, and my mother as well. You know, not separate. You know, together. And the individual case is obviously not indicative necessarily of the overall picture, because there might be like specific societies in which it is different.
Okay, so this is a very good point. So the first and foremost point to remember, and I let me remind you, because I want people to get out of this conversation with something that they can speak about, and negotiate and digest during the next conversation. So number one, there is absolutely no correlation between being good and intelligent. Number two, and this leads me to your question, and any truth that presented in the humanities, not in the science, in the humanities, is only aggregate. Only aggregate. And when I mean aggregate, I mean on average, okay? Girls or women tend to live longer than men. Is that saying anything of the next women that come in the door? The answer is no. On average, women tend to be to live longer. By the way, statistics mean or derived from the Latin word state, statisticum. Statistic is the arithmetic of the states. So the state, okay, the state has nothing but statistics. So if the states want to make decisions that forecast into the future, they need to say, listen, women tend to live longer, therefore we as a state need to get prepared in A, B, C, and D, okay? So this is extremely crucial point. On every truth in the humanities, not the science, is only aggregate. And one example say nothing about the
individual.
about or one individual say nothing about the rule. Okay, so this is one. B, and you say there are other things that matters, like grit and motivation and cultural, and there are a lot of things. And I have never, and I don't know any intelligence researcher that says that intelligence is everything. We know that the correlation with between intelligence and life success, whatever that means, is approximately 0.6. 0.6 mean 30.6 square. So 36% of the variance can be explained by intelligence. So 36 or even 45% of the variance between people regarding the life success can be explained by intelligence, which means that the majority, more than 50%, cannot be explained via intelligence. So you have luck, which is crucial, which is extremely important. And you have grit, and you have motivation, and you have, the friends, the society, and the people that you hang with. They are very important, but
it is the single most important, though.
Yes, we didn't find one single attribute that one can measure through a test that lasts like 2 hours that can predict better than intelligence as a single attribute. Okay?
Right. We've talked about a little bit artificial intelligence, and you said that it is the effort of us to teach the machine how to think like a human being. Okay. How much different is this translation from the human mind to the machine mind? Maybe even not far, maybe in relations to what you've mentioned from Maimonides' Guide to the Perplexed, which talks about truth and false and good and evil, because machines, they do know just zeros and ones, or electricity or no electricity, which is a little bit like true and false, right? Boolean.
Many people say that there is no artificial intelligence. We only have truths and one. We only have like a transistor, which means like a switch. Okay? Transistor is basically a switch. So we switch currents and we switch voltages, and then we build more complex and more complex and more complex and more complex system that from far away, it looks as it has artificial intelligence, but there is nothing in it. Now, I will argue that it's not the case. I will argue that it's not the case. People say that the human mind, yes, it's just neurons, like we have 10 billion or 100 billion neurons, eh? And every neuron, each neuron is just a switch. But when you aggregate, when you combine all those 100 billion neurons, you get consciousness. So something, it's called in philosophy the emergence theory. So when the system become more and more complex, you get attributes that you didn't have in the first simple version. Let me give you an example, because it's the most common example to expand this. Let's call, how you say, retivut, wetness?
Yeah, let's
wetness,
say.
Okay? Let's say, you can say gestalt, but I will say something else, because gestalt usually means the whole is bigger than its part. But you can say gestalt, but let's go with the wetness example. One water molecule, H2O, you cannot say that it has wetness. It is not wet. But when you combine, when you aggregate, when you have like 100 million molecules, so you get the feature, the attribute of wetness. And the wetness emerges from like 100 million molecules. So this is one. Number two, we are very, very different from the machine. We are very different from the artificial intelligence being conducted right now. And let me give you, and I think that there is one paradox that stick a nail in the heart of the conflict between intelligence and artificial intelligence. And the paradox goes like this. There are things that a simple machine can do that even the smartest human being cannot achieve. And I will give you an example. Just multiply two 64-bit numbers in your head. A modern computer can do it in less than 1 billionth of a second, okay? There is one thing, your computer, your iPhone, can multiply two 64-bit numbers, and it can do it 1 billion or 2 billion times in a second, okay? And this is like a very simple machine can achieve something that we cannot grasp. We cannot do it in our head. And the other side of the paradox, there are some things that a retarded child can achieve, and the retarded, it's not like a slang, it's a clinical observation. A child with an IQ of below 70, okay? There are some things that a retarded child can achieve, and the most sophisticated artificial intelligence systems cannot. For example, play hide and seek. Okay, so this is the tension between human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
What would prevent a machine from playing hide and seek?
Because if you this is a very good question. Because there are two types, there are a lot of, but just a second, could you just mute it?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a very good question, and which leads me to the next issue. And there are two types of learning. One is rule-based. The other is not rule-based. Let me give you an example, okay? Because I have come prepared, okay? So I want to share the screen, and I will give you an example that I think say exactly what it is, okay? So this is rule-based, okay? Oh, I'm sorry.
Who is this model that you took in order to take these beautiful photos?
She is my daughter. Okay.
No, I was talking about you in the...
Okay. So, okay, let's say, and now you all can see this one? You all can see this slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now,
yes.
Okay, so this slide raises two questions. One, why do we love our grandmother food? Why in Israel we say ochel shel savta, but when you go to your grandmother, her foods taste the best. This is the best food, you know, the food that has like the taste of a home, the taste of memories. Why we love so much grandma food? So this is question number one. And the question number two, would you consider being able to solve a Rubik's Cube, 3x3 Rubik's Cube, as an indication for being smart? If a 10 years old child can solve a 3x3 Rubik's Cube, would you consider this as an indication that the child is smart?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
What would you say?
Okay, so with a 10-year-old Rubik's Cube,
7 years old. 7 years old.
Yeah, I would say it is some of an indication, right? There is something to work with. Okay, he's got something in the books. Okay, we can work with it. With a grandma, why
do you love your grandma's food?
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, they are higher up, making the same food for the angels now. But sure, I do, and I think why? It's a good question. I think that the healthy food, revolution didn't start when they were cooking, so that's probably the reason. We have to check that theory in 50 years, where people of today are gonna be grandmas. No, but I'm kidding. Obviously, it is emotional also.
Okay, so I'm going to answer those two questions, and it's going to be a little controversial. Nevertheless, I think it's very important. Now, let me show you a video clip of a machine that can solve a Rubik's cubes under 1 second. Watch.
Eins laufen, müssen nochmal 2 auflaufen. Ja, müssen nochmal 2 auflaufen. Ja, 3, 2, 1.
I will do it again. So this was under 1 second. The cube was genuinely mixed, and the machine solved it under 1 second. Let me show you it again in slow motion.
Das heißt ich. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, and now, just a second, let me end show, okay? And stop share, okay. And now we are back in business. Okay, so would you consider this machine to be intelligent?
No.
Why not? By the way, most people, not most people, all people will say that a 7 years old solving a 3x3 Rubik's Cube indicates he is smart or intelligent in some way, and all people will agree that this machine is not smart. The people who invented it, the people who programmed it, they are smart, because the machine is like a golem, right? It's like the golem of fog. It just follows instructions. And if you follow the instruction, you are not smart. The people who gave you the instructions, they are the smart. They are the ones we should cherish, okay? So you agree with it, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Now, this is the last question, and now I'm going to combine everything. But the 7 years old boy or girl, child, that learned how to solve the Rubik's Cube, he looked it up on the internet, and he got the recipe. And he just following the recipe. He has nothing from his own. He's just following the recipe. And how do I know that I'm correct? Because if he's just doing like this, yes, and he's following the recipe, one phase at a time, and then before the final phase, I'm going to do like this, mix it a little bit, he loses it completely. He will go over and start over again. So what is the difference, Nathaniel, between the machine that a second ago you said, it's not intelligent, it just follow instruction, and the kid which does exactly the same thing?
Right. So I think that a machine by definition just follows instructions, okay? And that child is doing all kinds of things, but in comparison to other kids, but at the end of the day, who knows, where intelligence is a relative term, because he is, even the child who is clinically retarded under the IQ of 70 is more intelligent than the cat or whatever. So based on my evaluation of 7-year-old kids, his ability to follow these instructions while being a 7-year-old indicates that his general intelligence, whatever that may be, is actually something that you can develop. Now, over time, yes, as if you would have told me, how about an 18-year-old who is doing Rubik's Cube and everything he can do is follow the instructions, that would be like not so impressive. You know the joke about the mathematician and the physicist or the engineer that had to make coffee. You know that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
but what I wanted to, my point was that we as human beings have double standards regarding intelligence. What we consider being intelligent as human in our domain, in human beings, we don't want to consider intelligence when machines are doing it. Now, which leads me to the grammar question. The only reason that you like or you love or you cherish your grandma food is because your grandma is following instructions. When you are eating her meatballs, you're eating the exact same meatballs that you were eating like 20 years ago. So it raises memories, okay? This is why you love your grandma's food and not your friend's grandma's food, because your grandma's food is exactly the same. Your grandma is not cooking with her mind, she is cooking with her hand. And this is exactly the same recipe. This is the only things that you love about your grandpa is the memories, okay? So this is, again, what do I want to go, where do I want to go with this? There are two kinds of learning skills. One, that you are rule-based. You learn the rules, you learn the procedure, and you follow the rules. When you're solving a Rubik's Cube, a quadratic pole equation, yes? How you say it? Quadratic pole equation?
Yeah, if I would have known what it is, maybe I would have
No,
known.
משוואה ריבועית.
No, yeah. Quadra, yeah.
If you want to solve,
to the second power, equations of the second power.
if you want to solve a quadratic equation, so you have ax squared plus bx plus c, so you have the rule, you have the recipe, okay? And this is something that machines
Vieta's
do.
Recipe, yeah. Vieta's recipe, in this case.
And this is something that machines can do extremely well, and human beings, we are not that good in following recipes, and this is why many people hate mathematics. But there are some kinds of learning that are not rule-based. There are some kinds of learning that we learn to do it, but we don't know how we do it. Let me give you an example. To see, to walk, to speak. We don't know how we walk. I can give you a set of instruction, lift your right leg and then put it over there and then try to balance yourself. But it doesn't work. Now, how do I know it doesn't work? Because when we tried to take this set of instructions and implement them in a machine, the machine didn't work. It fell, okay? We don't know how we see.
Maybe you're not good enough in giving instructions. That is to say, you don't have, I mean, we as humankind at the moment, science at the moment is not good enough in formulating those instructions and in detailing them and writing enough instructions. And by the way, in regards to the previous case, if I would have seen in a machine that can do everything a 7-year-old and solve a Rubik's Cube, I would think it is quite intelligent. But okay. The point is that maybe we're not just good at it yet.
Okay, so let me give you an example why I'm inherently right. Okay, and it's not just
because you have a PhD.
No, no. Okay, let me give you an example. Because I think it's very important. Now I see many smart and intelligent comments on the chat. Unfortunately, I have one brain and I'm a man, so I need to just focus on the conversation with you, Netanel. So I'm very sorry, and we will try to answer all the questions later on in the discussion. Okay? So I see with the corner of my eyes that you are having and you are raising very intelligent and smart and enlightening points in the chat. Nevertheless, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm going to ignore all of them. Now, why do I think that you are inherently wrong? Wrong. There is one thing that we call MNIST, okay? MNIST is what we say, it's like a data set of digits, okay? Digits, okay? This is handwritten digits. So the handwritten digits are basically a picture of 28 by 28 pixels. And 28 by 28 pixels mean that in each picture, we have 784 pixels, okay? So we got, this is like a real 5 that a person drew. This was extracted from the zip code project that they wanted to build a machine that can read or automatically read zip codes from envelopes, okay? This was a project conducted in the US in the 80s. A project led by Jan LeCun, who was the former chief AI researcher in Facebook. Now, if you want to get all the different possibilities to draw a picture like this, you will get 2 to the 784 power. This number is inaccessible to anyone. It is much bigger than the number of atoms in the universe. So, what do I mean by this? I mean that if you want to build a rule, if you want to build an equation that take a picture and output like this is 6, this is 4, this is 7, okay? You will need the domain, the space that this problem, this very simple problem opens is inaccessible. Nevertheless, a 4-year-old can just in one glance look at the picture and say, this is 4, this is 7. It's very easy for me. But if you take a child and say, okay, how much multiply 15 by 22? I can do it. I can do it, which is a much simpler version of the mathematics that you need to get what is the right digit, okay?
It's amazing. First of all, the numbers are overwhelming here. Again, I don't know enough about the developments in the science of machine learning and deep learning and how you, first of all, minimize the need for such computing power to deal with these questions. And on the other hand, I don't know how much better computers are getting at it. So I would be, as far as I'm, as far as my knowledge, I'm convinced, I should say.
Okay. Would you like to speak about eugenics and what's the connection between intelligence and God?
Oh, sure. I just want to kind of summarize what you said. How about the notion of the valley of uncanny? Because that's, whenever I hear about artificial intelligence and I follow Sam Harris a little bit, and you've mentioned consciousness. His wife wrote a book about that lately. And this problem of the valley of uncanny, the moment that a machine could fool a human being that, it is like a human being, like Westworld, so to speak. So do you think it stands, how far, are we from that point? If we're going to get there, or are we there already, or?
Okay, let me give you an example of what we cannot achieve right now with artificial intelligence, and this will be much better. So I think that right now what we can do really well is things like this. We can make robots run, okay? This is from Boston Dynamics. This is a combination of the money from Google and the brain from MIT, and they are doing incredible things. They can actually make robots that run amazingly. And one thing that we cannot do is this. Now, I want to, from current slide. So this is 2 problems, okay? One that was very, very popular, like I think 1 year ago, that Google Photos accidentally classified a picture of a woman, of a black woman, as a gorilla. Okay? Now, this was a sensation, because you say, wow, Google, you are racist. Now, they try to correct the algorithm, and I'm going to be very specific. From a computer without the cultural context, we are not that different from gorillas. We as human beings, we share 99% of the DNA. So it's not, we are not that different. But a human being would have never made this error. Never. And this is something, now we take this error, yes, we take this thing and we load it with the emotional sensitivities that we have regarding human beings and gorilla and the black-white community, so everything. But from an algorithmic perspective, we are not that far away. the algorithm didn't say it's a chair, okay? Now Google tried to fix it, and we are trying to fix it as well. The other thing is what we call now AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence, giving the ability to be smarter in every domain, not just in a specific domain, because this is something that we see a lot. Now we see brilliant people in chess, but chess players usually have an average IQ. So the idea of human achievement or human accomplishment that you can practice and practice and practice until you become top leading expert in one field. But this expertise doesn't shed light on other domains in your life. You will be much better at this domain, but it will say nothing about other domains. And this is why you see like very prestigious academics who can speak nonsense about things that they don't understand, okay? Okay? Your ability in one domain say usually nothing about your ability in other domains. And we want artificial general intelligence. So again, let me show you this slide, okay? What do you see in the picture?
I see former President Barack Obama messing with someone who's on a scale.
Why is he messing? What is happening there?
Yeah, he's measuring his weight, and former President Obama is putting his foot down, at least on that subject, and changing the weight, obviously, making a joke.
Yes, but you understand the joke. But you understand the joke. Now, if I tell an artificial intelligence or deep learning machine, tell me what you see in this picture, it will tell me that it's people, one on a scale and they are having fun, having a good time. But the algorithm doesn't capture the scene, okay? Because there is one thing that you need to reason about it, okay? And you need like a formal knowledge that people don't want to be overweight, okay? If we just, for example, we will be in a culture that cherish overweight, so this would not be funny.
What do you mean? Is that our culture?
No.
I got it wrong? You see, people can miss on cultural memes as well.
Yes.
Okay, I'm starting a diet, obviously, tomorrow. Okay. Okay, so now getting into God, getting into maybe even Judaism. So what's the connection between God and intelligence? I think you touched it a little bit, but could you elaborate, please?
I will, gladly, but first of all, please give the introduction that this is the most inflammatory subject ever exists.
Oh, sure, guys.
This is the most inflammatory subject on the US and the US politics right now. So this is a very, very sensitive project right now, okay? So just give this introduction.
Right, alongside the one you said before, that the individual variety is always greater than any statistical one. I don't know about always, but always is a big word. But
let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. If you take two people at random, okay, in the US, if you take two people in random in US and you measure their IQ and you subtract and you get the difference in their IQ, you will get approximately, if you do it long enough or many times enough, you will get on average 70 points. Okay, 70 points, the difference between two randomly chosen people, okay? Now, if you look at the difference between, like, let's say the whites and the blacks in the US, you will get approximately 15 points. So there is a intelligence differences, and one can ponder about where they come from and what's their origin. And this is extremely important questions, but nevertheless, group differences are smaller than individual differences.
Right, and at the end of the day, when you are hiring someone, you shouldn't really care about the group differences. You just need one driver for your robbery, so you don't care, even if it is, let's say the stigma. Again, I didn't do the research. Is that Asian drivers are not very good. That's the stigma. but I just need a one driver for my robbery. And this Asian guy is the best driver that I can get. It doesn't matter that the average Asian driver might be
Let me give you an
theoretically, again,
example.
according to stigma.
Let me give you an example because it's again, I can't stress it enough, okay? And this is examples that Ori Kolb, our mutual friend, gave me. Now, let's say that I'm an NBA scouter, and some people say, listen, there is a great Asian player. And I say, listen, on average, Asian are shorter than whites and black, so I won't go to see him. This is a stupid strategy, okay?
Yao Ming,
because
you
on
remember
average,
the guy who used to play in the NBA, Yao Ming, he was like,
Yao Ming was, by the way, in his times, the tallest NBA player, okay? So yes, on average, Asians are shorter than blacks and whites. Nevertheless, it means absolutely nothing regarding the next person that you are going to see, okay? So this is extremely, extremely, extremely important. And one can say exactly the same things about sex differences in cognitive abilities, okay? So if you want, we can go to the sex differences, or if you want, we can go to the ethnic group differences. And,
ethnic, and if you can throw something about Jews, let's go with Jewish intelligence or...
Okay, so we have like 13 minutes left. So are we having fun so far? Because
I think everybody is fascinated.
Are you having fun? Because I can't see you. Usually,
let's put this, and everybody who's having fun should clap.
They are not here, I think.
We have to unmute ourselves first.
Oh. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But I can't see you, okay? And I'm a short person, so it's extremely important to me to get what you're feeling. And okay, so let's go to the ethnic differences, and let's go to what we call the Jews, okay? Now, I will start with the Jews. We have, like in the US, and most of the researchers in IQ comes from the US. They barely, practically invented it, yes, the Stanford Binet, which initiated in Stanford University. So we have like this. We average, or we normalize the IQ score as 100 to the Caucasian white population in the US. According to this normalization, Asians tend to score approximately 105, 107, okay? And like 1 year ago, there was a lawsuit against MIT and Harvard because Harvard and MIT, I don't know.
Set higher standards. Yeah,
yes, they normalize the IQ, the Asians' IQ score as less to not accept everyone, because if the Asian will get their real GPA, or I don't know, SAT, yes, Stanford, MIT, Harvard will be flooded with Asians. So MIT and Harvard, yes, they take their SAT and they lower it down. And okay, this is a lawsuit that was filed in Boston against MIT and Harvard. So this is one thing. And we have the Ashkenazi Jew. We don't have Jews as a whole unified group. We have Ashkenazi Jew, which is the European Jews came in the 19th century that are average approximately one standard deviation above. So we have...
just a second, are you going to explain what is it? What's a standard deviation?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So everything is distributed again according to the bell curve, and which is, by the way, the name of the most influential book, the most influential book about IQ ever written in the US. So the bell curve say
also
that,
very controversial. You know, it's
yeah, definitely. Very, very controversial. Charles Murray cannot publish a book in any decent publisher house in the US, except from very conservative alt-right productions. Now, the bell curves means that most people tend to be on average in their weight, on average in their height, on average in their IQ. And what I mean by average, 70% of the people will be between 85 and 115. This will be 70% of the population between one standard deviation below and one standard deviation above. So between, if the mean of the average is 100, so you get 15, which is a standard deviation. So 100 minus 15 equals 85, and 100 plus 15 equal 115. So in this range, you will get 70% of the people. Now, if you expand the bell curve to be 2 standard deviation, so between 70 and 145, you will get 96% of the population. Now, let me give you a fact that you can put it in a context. IQ 70 in the US will rescue you from the electrical chair. Let me say it again. IQ 70 and below in the US will rescue you from the electrical chair in a case of murder.
How about 130 and above? Do you get, because I get a higher from, I may get a contract if, just to wipe out people,
Now,
how about
again,
130 and above?
the US Army, if your IQ is below 83, will not conduct you to the Army. The US Army doesn't conduct to the Army or doesn't hire to the Army anyway with an IQ of 83 and below. Now, 83 and below is approximately 10% of the population. The US Army, the biggest, most man-demanding institute in the US, say, I have nothing to do, there is no job possible for 10% of the population. No job. Therefore, I cannot conduct anyone, I cannot hire anyone to the Army if he has IQ of 83 and below. Okay? Now, this is extremely important. Now, why do we keep saying that? Because IQ means socioeconomical status. IQ mean money. IQ mean your class in the US, okay? And if you don't look on the American society with the IQ glasses, you will see a very, how you say metushtash?
Blurred.
A very blurred picture, okay? If you take the average Ashkenazi Jew, and you take the average Ashkenazi Jew salary, and the average Mexican, and you take the average Mexican salary, you will see vast differences. The average Ashkenazi Jew will make much more money than the average Mexican. But if you normalize it according to IQ, you will get no difference. Again, Ashkenazi Jew with IQ of 120 will earn as much as a Mexican with 120. And Ashkenazi Jew with 85 will earn exactly like Mexican with 85. In other words, the American society is much more meritocratic than what we think. It is much more meritocratic. We value people by their abilities. And in the far most technological society ever conceived in human history, abilities means also IQ, cognitive abilities. I don't need your strengths. I have machines. I can outsource things to China. I need your mind. And therefore, in the US and in Israel and in all OECD countries, we pay people by their abilities. And by ability, I mean cognitive abilities. The smarter you are, the more chances you are to get more money, okay? Because we need your power of reason, but not always. Of course, it's not always. Again, like everything that I've just said, nothing here is always, but on average, on aggregate, let's say, and Charles Mary stated in the beginning of the bell curve, we say, listen, let's say that you are a child in heaven, because you speak about heaven a lot, okay? And you go, and before you go down on earth, God asks you this question: would you prefer to be born in a family that is 2 standard deviation high in the socioeconomic status, or would you prefer to born in a normal family but being with IQ of 2 standard deviation above? And Charles Murray says, of course, socioeconomic status is important. Of course, if your parents are rich, the chances that you will be better off in life are increasing. But in this industrial society, in this super technological society, your smarter choice will be, give me the highest IQ. Highest IQ to a normal family will be much better off than average IQ in a top socioeconomic family. And this is why we see differences between brothers, okay? Brothers and sisters, yes? Siblings, we are born in the same family, in the same socioeconomic family, but they are differ in their statuses, in their intelligence, in their income regarding their IQ, okay?
Okay, now I know that we don't have much time, but you've dealt so much with learning and with learning of languages. And I know that many of my students come to me and they ask, how can I better learn a new language, usually Hebrew? And I'm sure you have like tips, because what I have to say about it, they hear all the time. So few tips about learning a language.
Okay, so I will give 2 tips regarding learning a new language, and then we will get 2 or 3 answers and 2 or 3 questions, and I will try to answer, okay? So there is a very nice story from Ephraim Kishon, the famous writer, that he said that one day a priest approached him and said, listen, I want to read the Bible in Hebrew. How do I learn Hebrew? And Ephraim Kishon said, you cannot learn Hebrew. And the priest said, but you learned Hebrew. So Ephraim Kishon said, yes, but I didn't know it was impossible. So this is a nice story. But having said that, I would say that the Hebrew that Netanel is speaking about is like the ancient or the biblical Hebrew.
Right.
Biblical Hebrew. Since the most important thing in life is confidence. And I have seen people with vast and rich vocabulary that have no confidence in speaking, engaging in conversations. And therefore, my number 1 tip, and I've made a series of lectures, if you can see it on Hebrew, my number 1 tip would be go to iTalki and find an Hebrew teacher, someone who would like to speak in English, and in exchange, he will speak with Hebrew with you. You are native. I know that native is not Native American, yes, but you are Native American. You have like this TH that I
Native
cannot
English
have.
speakers, right?
Yes, like the. I have problem with TH only when they are close together, by the way. So I would say that you have something that most people, that Israelis don't. You have this great accent that we cannot obtain, yes? It's too late for us. And therefore, I would say go to iTalki and say, I am looking for someone who would like to learn English and in exchange would like to speak Hebrew with me. And this is the number 1 tip for where I stand for. Okay,
Excellent.
now...
Excellent. Let's have some questions. Simon, go ahead.
A very simple question. By the way, thank you very much. That's most inspiring talk. Very simple question. How do intelligent people remain religious?
Oh, this is a very good question. Let me elaborate on your question. And we have a negative correlation between religiosity and intelligence. Intelligence people tend to be less religious, okay? And this is for a fact, and we know it from around the world. And Europe was very secular until recently that many Muslims, which are much less intelligent than the average European, came, and Europe is facing a religious war right now, which it's not prepared because Europe is secular and it cannot deal with religious arguments. I would say that the whole notion of intelligence being not unconnected, but against reason, is the notion of the 19th century, which means that everything that the ancient did, was rubbish. They believe like the mythology is rubbish. Avodah zarah. How you say avodah zarah?
Idol worshipping.
Idol worshiping. It's a stupid thing. It's a stupid thing. Yes. How did they could believe in those nonsense? And I would say that the whole notion, the positivism of the 19th century, that say that science can can heal the world, can make everything better. Again, this process of these trajectories of ideas is not didn't start in the 19th century. It started in the Renaissance, from there to the Enlightenment, to there to the 19th century. I would say that now we can say, and I think that intelligence is a great example, you cannot do a reduction from morality to logic, okay? And I think that this is a very crucial thing. We didn't speak about Nazi Germany. We didn't speak about the eugenics movement in the US. But if you stick to reason without the context of tradition, without the context of history, without the context of the ancient wisdom, so you can go and reach very, very weird conclusions. And
yeah, I think the 20th century has been a paragon for that, and it's great
the eugenics
ideological
movement in the US.
It's the eugenics, it's fascism, it's communism. They are all trying to avoid tradition and look for reason.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example that I love so much. Let's say that Elon Musk needs a new liver right now, okay? It will be in the self-interest of the US government to put him on the top of the list. Why? Because we didn't see anyone like him. He's like he's not just taking his economy, he's taking everything forward with him. He's like unincredible. No, not incredible. Incredible. He's mega incredible. I'm sorry. He's mega incredible. But why we are feeling so uncomfortable in putting him on the top of the waiting list? There is something else. There was something transcendent to man behind his ability to give to society. I think this is very important. We didn't discuss Nietzsche, but this is exactly what Nietzsche said. Okay? If you kill God, it's not that usually people say, what is the most famous Nietzsche quote? We killed God. This is not true. This is not the quote. The famous quote is, or the full quote is, God is dead, we killed it, or we killed him, I don't know how he said it in German, and we will never be able to wipe the blood away. Because Nietzsche understood in the 19th century that the entire foundation, the entire moral foundations of the Western culture lies on Christianity and Judaism, like Judeo-Christian tradition. And if you take those foundations apart, and the entire building will collapse. Now, we didn't forecast how fast it would happen, but he actually forecast this very thing. Okay.
He did say that incipit tragedy. So here begins tragedy. After
yes.
God is dead.
Okay. Another question?
Yeah, guys, I cannot see hands, and I'm sure you've got questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and we can take it. I think that everybody enjoyed. If you, Nancy, go ahead.
Have you heard anything about this God gene?
What do you mean by what do you mean by God gene?
I think that's the concept of homo religiosis, maybe.
Yes. Is it a real physiological thing? Do you know?
If you mean by God gene, like a part of the brain that relates more to religiosity and spiritual experiences, so I think that this is exactly correct, and we will see people. Ramachandran, the famous Indian neuroscientists speak about it a lot. But again, what does it mean? The fact that we have this part of the brain, does it mean that it's an illusion, a persistent illusion, or something that manifests a reality, an underlying reality regarding our nature? Okay?
Right. So it's not solving a problem, just putting it in other terms.
Yes.
Right. And last but not least, Russ, go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Roi, on TV the other day, I saw a little advertisement about a program on robots, and all it said was, should we build emotions into robot, or would this be a bad thing? Do you think it would ever be possible or to build emotion into robots?
I think I thought about this question a lot, and this is a very hard one. Let me tell you what my thoughts on the process. There are two things. One is emotion as the real things. And so if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, so it's a duck. So people will be able to build machine that can emulate emotions accurately. So you will have like fembots, like it's like human women bots or women or female bots that you can communicate with, and they will act as real women. So if you will offend them, they will be offended, okay? They will be offended.
And they will remember it forever. That I can tell you.
And they will talk to. Yes, we can emulate this, I'm sure. Now, you're asking another question, whether this emulation means that they have real emotions. And by real emotion, I really don't know what you mean and what I mean. Now, I will say another thing. If you remember the Tamagotchi was a very simple, stupid machine or program.
Nevertheless, I think they're too old to remember Tamagotchi.
We, as human beings, inserted many of our emotions, Ken? I don't know if you know, but there is an Israeli show called Papa Nechmad. The Muppets, they're just Muppets. They're just dolls. They're just socks, yes? But we can give emotions very easily to static objects. So I will answer your question in two ways. One, we can emulate machines that act as if they have emotions, and we can do it accurately, I'm sure. And B, even without emulating these machines, we as human beings have the tendency to relate emotions to everything. Okay?
Wow. It was amazing. But again, I don't want to infringe on your time too much. And Roi, it was an absolute pleasure having you. And
thank you so much.
I hope I could, live to that standard when we talk about Hebrew in your show. So I certainly have a very high standard to considerate. Okay, and we had the greatest time having you, and I think it was super interesting for me, and that's my litmus test, So I know you go the same way. So
yes.
Thank you very much for coming. And
okay. Thank you so much.
I'm sure once your books are translated into English, you've got many people who are going to run to the stores and get them.
Guys, thank you so much.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please come back.
Okay, guys, a little bit about just housekeeping. Tomorrow we have Professor Tov, no lesson on Thursday as it is the Festival of Weeks. I still am trying to see what we're up against next week. And as always, it has been a pleasure. Sure. And if you have crucial things I'll try that you wanted to ask Dr. Yozevich and you didn't get to, send me. I can forward it to him. And maybe he would answer. I don't know. So
sure. Can he come back? Can he come back?
Oh,
Yeah, want
that's
him
a good
back.
question. I don't know if he wants me twice on his shows. I don't know if he will be willing to come twice here, but it depends, I would guess, on how well I do on his. No, so it was an amazing thing
Okay.
that we were both doing the same thing. I don't know if I can drag him again. You know, maybe.
Where is his show?
Come again?
Where is his show? I want to go to his show.
Oh, his show is in Hebrew. His guests,
Oh, I see.
it's in Hebrew. And he talks about many subjects with many interesting people. And this is why he called me, and this is how we got this done. Actually, some of the guests that, that I tried to get here were speaking with him and said to me that they don't do like interviews in English. And and translating is not the same. So I actually addressed some of the same people, and it was funny to see that we did something very similar, and I enjoyed it very much.
It was great. It was really good.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, guys.
I want him back.
Thank you. Thank you, Netanel.
Thank you.
Sure, guys. Just send me like feedbacks. Maybe that could get him to come back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
Bye. See you tomorrow.